Hello, and welcome back. Today for episode 19, I'm joined by Isabel Vique and Rebecca Drury from Flora and Fauna International, who are speaking with us about their anti-reptile-trafficking work throughout the Caribbean. We focus mostly on Union Island, home to the jewel-like Union Island gecko, little more than an inch in length. We get into the drivers of illicit trade, the great impact their work is having, and how inspired local communities have stepped up to protect their native species. If you like this episode and would like to follow more on this project, please follow the links in the description. And if you'd like to support us, you can make a donation at restoreplanet.org or follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Enjoy the conversation. Hello, and welcome back to Restore Our Planet podcast with me, your host, Jack Hull. I'm joined today from two members from FFVI who's going to share with us about their Caribbean reptiles projects. So starting with you, Rebecca, how are you? And tell us a little about your background and the work that you're getting up to.
I'm really well, thank you. I'm Rebecca Drury. I work at Fauna and Flora International. Fauna and Flora International is an international NGO working to protect ecosystems and species around the world. And my job at FFI is to lead the organisation's work to address illegal and unsustainable wildlife trade.
Fantastic. All right, thank you so much. And Isabel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Isabel Vique. I'm the Caribbean Program Manager. So I oversee the projects or some of the projects that FFI develops in the Eastern Caribbean.
Fantastic. All right, so Isabel, tell us a little bit about some of the species that you've been working with and a little bit about their ecology and background.
Well, we've been working in the Eastern Caribbean for over 30 years now. And one of the issues about the region is that we don't have big mammals, so there are no tigers, there are no elephants, and people might think that for that reason, the region is not so interesting, but regarding biodiversity. However, one of the particularities that the Eastern Caribbean has, like other island regions, is that there are different species in each island. So the islands are very small, but every island will have a unique racer, an unique or an almost unique iguana, a couple of unique geckos. So it's very diverse because when you move from island to island, you're going to be finding completely different animals and plants. And one of the reasons why, or the main reason why we work with reptiles is because, well, number one, they're not sexy, so to speak. So lots of people look for other species like birds or mammals to look after, but reptiles are really, really threatened in the Eastern Caribbean, and no one was really looking into them. So we decided to step up and start working with the conservation of these species.
All right, and tell us a little bit how you got started specifically when FFI decided, right, this is a moment where we need to take some action.
Well, I started working for FFI. Well, actually, I started in FFI during my placement research for the University of Cambridge. I did a master's degree with them. Then I'm feeling conservation leadership, and as part of the program, you develop a project with one of the conservation organizations in the CCI, Cambridge Conservation Initiative. So there were some very interesting projects out there, but I really fell in love with an illegal wildlife trade and behavioral change project in Nicaragua. I used to work in Central America, so it kind of ticked all the boxes. So with the Americas team, and with Rebecca, we worked a little bit into trying to understand a bit better the motivations that people have to consume sea turtle products, especially eggs and hawksbill shell. That was back in the day. It was successful. We put together a lot of information that ended up building the foundation for a full project that is coming to an end now. So years after, when FFI released an interesting position, I already knew there. I knew how they worked. I knew that I liked them. They also knew me. I went to an interview and I got a job with them. And the rest is history, I guess.
Fantastic. Just going back a little bit to what you said there. So what are some of the motivations of people to use? Or is eggs and hawksbill? What was the other species? Sorry.
There's a range of sea turtles that people could consume eggs from, and then the hawksbill. They usually take the shell to make trinkets, jewelry. But the eggs are from a range of species, green turtles, hawksbills, and many other species that they're all endangered. So in all the organizations I know, we've been trying to protect the turtles on the ground, so trying for people to not to go and poach the eggs, but this was a different approach. So it was more trying to understand the consumers, trying to see why they were doing what they were doing, to convince them to be more sustainable, to stop consuming the eggs of species that are really endangered. So for that, you really, it's very innovative, it's really new. So it must sound a bit like crazy, but it was more working on the human side of the conservation.
Right, okay. And can you tell us a little bit about the human side of the work you're doing with the Uni Geckos and the sort of motivations behind the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, so as every project in FFI, this project came from requests on the ground. So in 2017, the Forestry Department from St. Vincent and the Grenadines and a CBO community-based organization called the Union Island Environmental Alliance, who used to be called the Union Island Environmental Attackers, so people might know them by their old name. They reached out to us because they were very concerned about a tiny little gecko that lives in the island. They didn't know how, but this gecko was all over the place in the international pet trade, because people were trying to get it in Europe, the USA, and even in Japan to breed them at home. And they were really puzzled. They didn't know how people would be interested in anything like that to begin with. And then they didn't know how the geckos were leaving the island, basically what was going on. So they knew that we were working in other islands and that we were working with reptiles. So they thought that we could help. And this is when Rebecca, Jenny Daltrey, who used to be the head of the Caribbean, started working in the project. Rebecca, maybe you want to talk about a bit about the project?
Yeah, sure. So FFI partners with Cambridge University to deliver a master's in conservation leadership. And so every year we are invited along with other conservation NGOs to put forward ideas for research projects. So Jenny and I put together a placement looking at trying to investigate this concern by the partner organisation. And so we worked with a student called Josh Noseworthy, and he did an assessment, an online assessment looking at sales of lesser Antillean reptile species, many of which have yet to be studied or listed, red list evaluated. And he found that a huge number of those were available for sale online. And the majority of those sales were originating, if I recall correctly, from the US and from the EU and from Japan as well, which, as Isabel mentioned. And so he was able to kind of give us the evidence base, if you like, that this was a real concern and there had been a real surge in demand for some of the reptile species, which is in line with what we know about some of the reptile collectors, in that many collectors will explicitly seek out kind of rare, endemic, newly described and protected reptile species. So that gave us the basis for the project, which has now become a really valuable program of work and is protecting some of these reptiles on the ground.
Right, and just to give this is a bit of understanding about the Uni gecko. Isabel, would you mind describing to us what it actually looks like? I think it's quite an amazing little, what's often described as a jewel little species, isn't it? Very tiny little thing.
Yes, it's really, really small. It's like this big.
An inch more or less, yeah. Middle part of a finger.
It's very colorful. And it has dots. It looks like it has eyes on it. But the interesting thing is how small it is. So it was only discovered in 2005. But so it seems that traffickers pay attention to scientific papers. So people knew that it was out there and they were actively looking for it. And as I always say, the problem with the Union Island gecko is how beautiful it is. Because if it was ugly, maybe no one would want to have it in their houses, but this one is beautiful. And also that the collectors knew about it, but not many other people knew about it. So when we started working with these species, there were people in the community who didn't know about the species. They had never seen it. They didn't even know that it existed, even though they were living in the island, whereas people as far as Japan knew about the species and were seeking to get one. So one of the very important things that we've been doing through this program, especially with the Union Island Environmental Alliance, is to raise awareness in the community. So we take out people from the community, they see the gecko, they see the environment, they have a nice day out, a little picnic, they learn a little bit about the ecology and the history, how it's important, and it's really building a lot of pride. So we've seen a huge difference in the community since we started the project to nowadays. So now if you go in the main street of Union Island, you can see that a local artist will make t-shirts with a beautiful drawing of the Union Island gecko, or people will talk about it, and people will use the colors to decorate their houses. So we've only been working on this for like 5-6 years, but the impact in the community, but also in the international trade has been great, has been really good.
You're saying that you take locals on a kind of, like a crash course tour of sort of the history of the species and its importance and that kind of things. What kind of things do they learn about the gecko? It's out of curiosity. So imagine if I'm one of sort of local people who's about to learn about all these things. What kind of information do they learn?
Well, for safety reasons, for security reasons, we cannot tell them much about the ecology, the detailed ecology or where they live. So they usually see one, but because it's taken to them by one of the wardens working in the reserve. But they have a lot of, they usually have a lot of questions that we try to answer. And one of the things that shocks them the most is how small they are. So when we started talking about a gecko, they were thinking about a house gecko. A house gecko is quite large in comparison. And when they see this one, they're shocked about how international people are so interested in something so small. And then when it starts showing its colors, because usually they don't show them all the time, and they see how beautiful it is, they kind of understand. But for people who are not used to exotic pets, they're a bit puzzled, and they usually ask about what they eat, or people are very interested about what animals eat, or
what do they eat? Sorry, I'm one of those people, evidently.
They eat insects. They're carnivorous.
Of course.
Small spiders and other arthropods, or where they live, and if they get together, if they live alone, if they lay eggs. Especially children, they're very interested about how they reproduce and the life cycle. Because we also take schools and also the wardens in the reserve, who have been doing an amazing job since the project started. They go to the local school to give talks, and they have a program called Warden for a Day. And now all the children on Union Island want to be wardens when they grow up, which is fantastic.
Great. So I'm actually sort of betraying myself, sort of childhood curiosity here, but how long do they live for?
We don't know that much about the ecology, but they're small, so they should be short-lived. I would say probably 5 years.
Oh, that's not too bad. All right.
Obviously, in captivity, they might live a little bit longer, but
of course,
but because no one eats them.
Right. Okay, so perhaps, Rebecca, this might be a question for you. You're talking there about sort of where these species sort of end up, various parts around the world. So what happens? How do they go from sitting quietly in the sun in and end up in, say, like Japan or somewhere else? What happens?
So these species that are very rare and endemic are usually sought after by collectors who are quite knowledgeable about the trade. So it's usually get ordered on demand. So it's actually very difficult to transport reptiles because there's really high mortality rates, as you can imagine, from dehydration or suffocation or starvation. So most of them are collected and then transported via air, either in person or by post. In small batches, but the trafficking routes are constantly in flux. But because they want direct flights, again, because of the mortality rates, they tend to be kind of focused on major air transport hubs. And then a lot of the trade, kind of organising the trade, happens online these days. So, you know, there are lots of different social media platforms to reach customers. And to organise this kind of transaction with limited risk of being caught. It's easy to switch between platforms to dodge targeted law enforcement, for example. So there are kind of these large reptile shows and there are outdoor markets, and these are points where people tend to meet and talk about their passion, and they might kind of have the transaction might happen there, but a lot of the purchase in advance is often organised online and through direct messaging. And it, you know, the fact that the rise of these online markets enables these hobbyists who are very passionate and very knowledgeable and really care often about the species to kind of skip the middleman or the intermediaries as well, and just kind of get involved in selling these species to supplement their income and fund their hobby.
Okay, all right, and I think Isabel, back to you. I think here it's a good time to say. So tell us about how FFI have intervened and how you've you're tackling this problem. What exactly have you been doing on the ground, and some of the successes and some of the challenges that you've had?
So one of the first things that we did was to help the Union Island Environmental Alliance to form a wardens team. So now there are people patrolling the area where the gecko lives day in and day out. So there is a presence there. And just with that, we saw a big change. We saw a decrease in signs of poaching. We saw that people will come to them and talk to them about the issue and how they were feeling about it, because there has been a lot of community meetings, communication, and awareness raising. As I said before, that's kind of the second pillar of the program, working with the community, seeing what their concerns are and how they would like to proceed with protecting the species. We've also been doing a lot of capacity building. So a couple of years ago, well, before the pandemic, now everything is going to be before and after the pandemic, right? So before the pandemic, we organized a set of training courses for the people who are working on the front line of for the protection against the international trade, meaning custom officers, the police, the military, the forestry departments. And we did 1 week training courses on counter wildlife crime that went from how to stop a person in a border if you think that there is something dodgy, to how to search a hotel room, or how to put together evidence for a case in court. We went through a whole range of things that have to be done to stop the trade. And we try to involve as many people as possible from the agencies that could be involved, because they are, as I said, in the front line. And the last pillar of the work was international policy. So in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Forestry Department and national government put together the case to get the Union Island gecko protected internationally from trade. So CITES, which is an international agreement between different parties in different countries saying we want to regulate the international trade of our species, organized a conference in 2019. They meet every 3 years, and in those conferences you can put through cases for species to be listed in one of the appendixes. So when one species is listed in one of the appendixes, that regulates the trade internationally. Who can trade, how can trade, what paperwork they need. So in 2019, the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines put together the case for the Union Island gecko to be on Appendix 1, which is the most restricted one. They took it to the COP, and it was fully supported by the European Union, but also, and this was a beautiful moment for their fellow Eastern Caribbean countries. So St. Lucia spoke very highly of the work that St. Vincent was doing, and they supported in the voting so that the species became, when listed into Appendix 1. Because one of the problems with some of the species that we come across is that they've been discovered recently, or no one has really listed them. There is the scientists don't know much about them. They're still learning about them, but the collectors already know about them. And if they have not been listed and there is no national regulation because the species is not very well known, then the situation is a bit of a free-for-all. People think that they can just take them and trade them, which is not true, but it's a bit less obvious that you can get caught. But as soon as they get into one of the appendixes, some people feel like it's not worth it to keep trading them. And we've seen that people have reduced the trade, mostly in Europe, after the gecko was listed, because now all the countries in the European Union and in other countries are going to really be looking into those transactions, which they might have missed before.
Well, brilliant. So you have actually seen some direct positive impacts already.
We have. We've seen an over 80% reduction of availability of Union Island geckos online from 2017 when the project started to last year.
Fantastic. And what have been some of the perhaps unexpected challenges that you faced on the project?
A very good question.
Sorry, I put you on the spot there. Don't worry, you don't have to. Perhaps something a little bit surprising. You thought, oh wow, we didn't quite think of this, or just something quite interesting, something quite positive, surprising you had. You mentioned there that the local communities responded really positively. So have they become like a real sort of vanguard of protecting their ecosystems?
Yeah, something that was also very nice is that this project, not only on Union Island or in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but this legal wildlife trade project in the Eastern Caribbean has really empowered the law enforcement agencies in the Eastern Caribbean. So we've seen them using what they learn in their training courses, also communicating much more among countries, because this kind of trade is never only national. So we know that the collectors go to different islands, and they have hubs, and then they send the animals to other countries from their hubs. So this international communication and collaboration was key, and it's happening. But for example, St. Vincent got fared so well when the Union Island gecko got into Appendix 1 that they are now working on a proposal for a new species, and they're working with St. Lucia, another country that has similar problems with other species, and they're just working together for a bigger aim. And that, from FFI's point of view, is exactly the thing that we would like to see happening. So we're mere facilitators. We can provide technical advice, we can help with some funding, help fundraising, things like that. But the aim is to build the capacity in country and to raise awareness so that it's the people from the communities and it's the people from the national governments who have the tools and the power to conserve their own species.
Fantastic. Okay, and back to you, Rebecca. What would you like to see, or what do you expect to see? So two slightly different questions there over the next 5 to 10 years. Where are things heading for reptiles in the Caribbean?
So the project that Isabel's described has been really successful, and we're really pleased with the results and that the threat has reduced. But of course, there are many other endemic reptiles in the Caribbean. It's an incredibly biodiverse, rich area. And so there are many other species, there are other islands to work on where there is still a threat. So our hope in the next few years is to be able to replicate this work in other islands for other species. As Isabel's already talked about, it's really important to monitor the species of concern, so that we can identify if there is kind of a surge in smuggling and trades. We need better understanding about the ecology of these species so that we can prevent their overexploitation. And we can involve more communities and institutions locally to help protect these species and really, be passionate about supporting their conservation. And then, of course, as Isabel's already talked about, we need to make sure that, although many of these species are protected in their range states and their range countries, so it's illegal to remove them, once they've left the country, there's very little we can do unless they are listed in CITES and there's international regulations to manage their trade. So there's lots of work to do, and also perhaps to work with collectors as well to reduce demand and make sure that we're using or we're exploiting species sustainably, or not at all if they just can't withstand this kind of trade.
And Isabel, finally, how would you like to see things change over the coming years?
Well, there are other issues that are threatening the Union Island gecko at the moment. So we're going to keep working on illegal wildlife trade to make sure that it doesn't bump back. But there is also, well, as you might imagine, when people think about the Eastern Caribbean, they think about beautiful beaches and big hotels and vacation, and that is wonderful. But big hotels and unsustainable development are a huge threat for all of our species, not only because those hotels are usually built in the most pristine areas of the Eastern Caribbean, because that's where people want to be, but also because they usually bring with them invasive species and diseases with all the shipping of the materials that they need for the construction sites. And those invasive species, mongooses, rats, green iguanas, might either eat our species or interbreed with them, and then there is a loss of the genetic pool. If I'm getting too technical, just let me know.
No, it's okay. It's all very interesting. Great stuff.
And then we think that tourism is a great tool and a great income source for the Caribbean, but it can be done sustainably. It can be ecological. So in some other countries, they're building beautiful resorts without destroying the forest. And that's exactly the thing that we would like to see in the Eastern Caribbean, that new developments embrace the beautiful areas that are still there and that haven't been destroyed, and that can combine the enjoyment of people, locals and tourists alike, but also that these people visiting the islands still have the opportunity to see the Union Island gecko, because the hotel that they're coming to was very respectful of the area where it was built and how the materials that they used were brought in.
And where are some of those areas where companies, governments are actually getting that right?
Dominica has a very good example of an eco-lodge. Costa Rica is always the more obvious thing to look at. Ecuador, some companies are doing great stuff in the rainforest, but also in the Galapagos Islands, which are very similar to where we work. So it's possible and it's profitable. So it's not like we don't want to be here looking like the people who doesn't want the countries to develop. That's not the case at all. We're just saying it can be done, it can be profitable, but it can be respectful to both the communities and the species living in the region.
All right. So Isabel, tell us, where can people find out more about this project and the work you're doing?
They can always visit our webpage, faunaandflorainternational.org, and I'll be happy to respond emails, or if anyone wants to talk to Rebecca or I, they can get in contact with the organization, and we'll be happy to provide more information about the gecko and other species.
Fantastic. Thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.